There's going to be a changing of the guard this year in the representation for Ohio's 2nd U.S. Congressional District. That's because Republican incumbent Gene Schmidt was defeated in a primary earlier this year by Dr. Brad Wenstrup. The 2nd is vastly different due to redistricting, including all or part of Hamilton, Claremont, Brown, Adams, Highland, Pike, Ross, and Scioto counties. Voters have a choice in the race between Republican Dr. Wenstrup and Democrat William R. Smith. Wenstrup is a podiatrist who ran against Mark Mallory for Cincinnati mayor in 2009. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, but served a year on active duty in Iraq in the Medical Services Corps.
The federal government is spending $1.40 to every dollar they bring in. This is what has ran up a huge deficit. I know I cannot run my household this way. When you go to Washington, what will you do to help cut this spending?
Well, you're exactly right. You can't run your household that way, and the government shouldn't operate that way either. It's incredibly unfair to future generations that we continue to do that. The Simpson-Bowles Commission did take a look at some strategies to try and reduce the debt and the deficit, but no action has been taken since that time. I'm against increasing taxes. I'd love to see our tax revenues increase by putting people back to work, and that really is the bottom line. If we have people back to work, our revenues will increase, but more than anything, we have to take a very serious look at how we are spending our money. In one of the debates, Governor Romney mentioned that we have to look at things and decide, is this worth borrowing money from China for? And that's the bottom line. And if we don't get serious about reducing the debt and the deficit by cutting our spending, we're never going to get out of this.
We all know that the Affordable Care Act is coming. My question is, what do you plan on doing to help us with our costs associated with providing health care to our employees?
Well, the Affordable Care Act is going to be a problem for every business. First of all, I feel that businesses such as yours and any business that gets started is a gift to our country, because what you do is you take a risk to get your business going and you get people back to work and you get people to be able to provide for their families and put food on the table. So I applaud you for that. But with the Affordable Care Act, I think that we've missed the point, and it's going to be devastating to businesses. The cost to businesses is a problem. We've addressed the whole situation in the wrong manner. To talk about the Affordable Care Act, what we should have been doing before that is looking at who's uncared for in this country and why, rather than just who's uninsured. Because those that have insurance, i.e. Medicaid, which they estimate 50% of the country will be on Medicaid, will not necessarily have access to a provider. One study by the New England Journal of Medicine that was in the Washington Examiner last year showed that 66% of primary care doctors do not take Medicaid. And it isn't because they don't want to take care of people, it's because they can't afford to. And some doctors will do it for free because it's actually cheaper to do that than to go through the paperwork for the little reimbursement. So the problem that we have is we have a situation in this country where it's going to be a huge expense for businesses. And there are solutions to our healthcare industry to make things more affordable. Tort reform is one, doctors practicing less defensively, increased competition across state lines. Whenever insurance companies, as we see in the car insurance business, have to compete, you see the quality go up and the price go down. Also, insurance should go with the patient, not just with the job. That makes it difficult for people as well. Individuals and groups should be able to band together to purchase insurance together. The idea of insurance is to reduce risk, and the larger the risk pool, the less expensive it becomes, and the easier it is to get insurance. You have a pre-existing condition clause. Everybody wants someone with a condition to be able to get insurance and to be able to get care. But let's look at it realistically. If your home had no fire insurance and it burnt down, would you be able to buy that insurance the next day and have it cover what already happened? No, because it doesn't make financial sense. So the problem with pre-existing conditions is the cost. But if you can expand that risk pool so that it's a greater number of people buying insurance together, then the price for pre-existing conditions comes down. But it really is, regardless of who wins the presidency, whether it's Barack Obama or Mitt Romney, when it comes to this, we have to make changes. And I will tell you right now, there's 16 doctors in Congress, and hopefully 17 soon. And the idea that we're going to focus on is patient-centered solutions that help businesses to be able to afford to provide insurance, because one of the things you'll be faced with is deciding whether you want to pay the fine or whether you can still provide insurance for your employees.
90% of the small businesses in this country employ fewer than 4 people. My business is one of those. Yet there's been no discussion on how to help us. What are your plans to change that?
Well, I certainly don't want to increase any taxes on small businesses. And also, when we look at the Affordable Care Act, that's going to be an expense for businesses that may be very difficult. And I think that as a small business, you should be able to band together with other businesses to be able to purchase your insurance in bulk, reduce the risk. We also want to make sure that you're not getting over-regulated. Virtually every business I've visited, whether it's very large or very small, has a regulation story to tell me. You know, George McGovern was almost president of the United States. We just lost George McGovern, and he was a great American hero in World War II. As a senator and a man who was almost president, he learned a lesson after he got out of politics. He owned a restaurant and an inn, and he found out about all the fines, fees, and regulations that he had to endure. He got sued because someone slipped on his property, and he got sued because someone had a fight in the parking lot. In 1992, he wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal, and you can still find it, that spoke to the idea of all these years that he was in politics. He was passing all these laws that he thought was helping people, and he found out that he was putting people out of work, that he was closing up businesses. He thought these were helpful things, and he said, if I had just had these business experiences before I went into politics. And I think that's the key. So if you can elect someone like me who has a business experience, I've run my own practice for 26 years, starting with my own practice and with a larger group. And I understand what it's like to have a small business. And if we can get some of the regulators away, if we had regulators that were more concerned and parental rather than punitive, you could do a lot better in your business. Thank you.
Public education in Ohio and across America is losing ground because elected officials at both state and federal levels have a vested interest in demonizing public schools and passing federal mandates such as No Child Left Behind or Race to the Top under the guise of reform and choice. The reform and choice movement is not really about improving the quality of our public schools. It's really about privatization and corporate takeover of public education. The bottom line is profit, not the preparation of our youth for active participation in a representative democracy. So if you are selected to represent the people of our district, what will you do to stem federal intrusion into public education and return local control to school boards and the communities they serve?
Well, Doctor, in some ways I think you answered the question for me from the standpoint that I think the education decisions should be made at a local level. I think people and parents at a local level, along with the teachers and administrators, understand best what is needed for their community and for the kids that they teach. On a federal level for education, one size fits all is not appropriate. And I think we're spending too much time and money trying to manipulate our school system from a federal level, and it should be done more at the local level. And I would stand by that.
Just 6 years ago, there were twice as many people in the construction industry and in home building as there are today. And I think that also rings true throughout the rest of small businesses in the United States. One of the major problems is businesses like mine simply can't get loans today. So my question is, what do you plan to do to help ease the credit crunch?
Well, we see very often that construction has slowed down, although there are some people that are remodeling, etc. But the industry has been made very difficult for you because of the economy at this time. If people aren't working, obviously it's hard for them to build. But we do need to have some reforms as far as how people are able to get credit. We certainly saw over-regulation with the Frank Dodd proposals, and that's made it more and more difficult. Again, we're seeing more regulations that make it more difficult, and we'd like to free people up from some of these regulations. We always need some rules and we need some reform, but we've really gone too far, and it's making it difficult for banks to offer loans at this time.
What steps would your administration take on day one to relieve the effects felt by both businesses and middle-class families due to the doubling of gas prices in the last 4 years?
Well, Andrew, it's very simple, and we need to open up our energy throughout this country, our energy supplies. It's available, it's ready, and we have people ready to work it. I'm not at all sure why the President has blocked the XL pipeline. We also can do some of our own drilling. Natural gas in Ohio is abundant, and we can harvest that with fracking. So those are some of the areas that we need to seek. You know, we should be seeking energy independence everywhere we turn, which will in turn bring down your gas prices. Energy independence is also a matter of national security. We should not be relying on foreign countries for our energy. When the Department of Energy was formed in the 70s, it was estimated that 70% of our energy came domestically and 30% came from foreign. And right now, I've been told it's just the opposite, 30% domestic and 70% foreign. So it's a matter of us just opening things up and let us thrive as a nation and provide our own energy, almost to the point where we could probably start exporting energy.
What will you do to make tuition affordable for those of us who are going to college trying to make a better life for ourselves and to create jobs that will help us continue on that path?
Well, I think that you hit it when you came to creating jobs that allow you to continue onto that path. Because your education is only valuable if it can lead to you being able to take care of yourself when the education portion is finished. There are many things that we need to look at as far as providing jobs afterwards. For example, there are many areas in manufacturing that need people trained in certain skills that they can get through their education, and we don't have those provided right now. Some of our community colleges are starting to engage with that. When I was in school, I worked several jobs, but I also took loans, and I was fortunate that I was able to go out, continue my education, and then go into a job. But it takes a lot of planning. Loans are available, but let's put them in places where we know that people are going to succeed, and let's provide an environment where people can succeed when they finish with their degree. And we know that that's a major problem right now.
I've been a small businessman in Claremont County for over 40 years. I've watched this county grow, but I've also watched the regulations of government grow to a point where they're hurting small business. What are you going to do to help eliminate some of the actual problems that we're having with overregulations?
You know, the problem that we have with the regulators is very often they are unable to be stopped, if you will. We're doing too many things that come without the consent of the governed. And every industry and every location where there's a business, I've had someone give me a regulation story. I had a woman in Pike County who owns a sawmill, and they've never taken the emerald ash borer through ash trees. They've never taken ash trees. And they were told that they had to change their process to accommodate the ash trees and the emerald ash borer, and it cost them $100,000. Now this is the type of problem that we see time and time again. Another industry, they came in and the regulator said, well, I have to fine you for something, and you have a broken broom in the corner, and even though the sign says broken, do not use, I'm going to fine you for that. I contend that if our regulators were more concerned and more parental rather than just punitive, we could all live by a set of rules. If they were coming in trying to make you better and trying to let your business thrive, we'd all be better served. So we have to reduce the amount of regulation that every industry is subject to. And if we can do that, it'll allow you to go on and thrive and do your job, and I'm sure that you'll do it safely and effectively.
There seems to be confusion about what could happen to Medicare in the future. Give me 3 specific points that would help clarify your position in the minds of voters.
Well, first of all, those that have paid into the system deserve to have their Medicare coverage. And I am concerned that the government will start restricting some of that coverage, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. I agree with Paul Ryan's plan, where he states that anyone 55 and older will be untouched, and those under are going to have to make some changes. The problem that we have in our federal government right now is that money that's been put into the system since the time that we were very young has been spent on other things. And that's why we have to make some modifications. We want Medicare to be there. That's the point. Some have said about Paul Ryan's plan, well, he's going to change Medicare as we know it. Well, he's not going to change it at all for those 55 and over, and those under will still have that option. But unfortunately, if we don't change things because of the mistakes made previously, then it won't be there for the next generation. So I think that there's some good, legitimate ways of taking a look at this. I think Paul Ryan has done that, and certainly there has to be some negotiations on it. But just to say we can continue doing what we're doing, we can't. We want to preserve it for future generations and look at all the options that are available.
Claremont County is traditionally a veteran-friendly and patriotic county. With so many young men and women coming back from active military service and so many other veterans in the county being unemployed, what is your commitment to helping these young men and women as they transition back into civilian life?
Well, Matt, first of all, thank you for your service. And as you may or may not know, I am still in the Army Reserve, and I'm an Iraqi war veteran, so I understand a lot of the challenges facing our troops as they come back from war. We are seeing some businesses, such as Cintas, that have a hiring program for veterans. And you know, these are the best and the brightest that America has to offer. And I think that that should be something that every company seeks to find, because you'll get a good employee. But a lot of the difficulties facing veterans when they come back have to do with the employment situation within our country today. So we need to be reaching out to them and putting them to work. I will be very active in trying to promote hiring of veterans throughout the district and throughout the country. 26%, I've been told by one general, of Americans 18 to 35 are ineligible to join the military because of felonies, drug abuse, lack of education, or physical fitness. So we know that those that have served are in the top percentages of the country and are great people to have in your hiring force. I'm an Iraqi war veteran, and when I came back from the war, I started to get more involved politically. And I started looking at many of the people that serve us as leaders. And I realized that I felt I had something to offer. And I was on a retreat, and the theme was, what are you doing with the time you have left? And I decided to do something more with the time I have left in my life. I've been in business for 26 years. In practice, I started with 2 employees, and when someone was sick, my mother came in. And every other Friday, I wrote the paychecks, and I paid the taxes, and I adhered to all the regulations and all the rules, and I bought the insurance. And halfway through my career, I joined a larger orthopedic group. I've been operations chairman there. And I've dealt firsthand with the struggles of patients dealing with insurance companies and government programs. And I've been in the military for 15 years with a deployment to Iraq. And I thought there's very few people that serve that have run a business, been in healthcare, and also served in the military. And those are some of the major issues of our day. And so I decided to get involved, because I didn't want to waste these experiences that I've been so blessed to have and not put them to greater use on behalf of my family and future generations and the community in which I live and my country. I believe that we are a country that has brighter days ahead. I believe that we have Americans that understand that sometimes we have to sacrifice, and it's a shared sacrifice. During World War II, men, women, young, old, rich, or poor, everyone pulled together to help make sure that our country was sustained and would go on to greater glories. And I think that we have Americans that understand that today. And when that happens, we can all enjoy the shared success that our nation can provide us. I believe that we want to be a free people, and I believe that we want to be the leaders of the free world. And I believe that we want to be exceptional, and I believe that we can be. And I think if we take that attitude to Washington, we'll have great successes and better days ahead. And I look forward to serving, and I thank you for your time.
If you're voting early by mail, make sure you carefully read the instruction sheet that's included with your ballot. It has key information on what you need to do to make sure that your vote is counted once that ballot is received at the Board of Elections. Tom McKee, 9 News in Hyde Park.